Good afternoon. Just a friendly reminder, this webinar is being recorded. Your camera and mic have been disabled. Please submit your questions or any questions that you may have in the Q&A box below. Thank you very much.
Hello, colleagues. I am going to wait about 2 more minutes till 2:05 just to allow everyone to get logged in. We are so grateful to have you all with us today. Thanks so much for joining us. Manny, could you share the logistics one more time for those who are just now joining us? Thanks so much.
Certainly. Good afternoon. Just a friendly reminder, this webinar is being recorded. Your camera and mic have been disabled for the remaining of the presentation. Please submit any questions that you may have in the Q&A box below. Thank you very much.
Hi, colleagues. It's so good to see my colleagues here at the coordinating board. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And I know that time is really important. We've got a lot going on, and we want to make sure to also give time to share with you all any answers to questions that you may have. I see that there's already a few questions in Q&A. Thank you so much for those questions. So as we move forward, feel free to add your questions in the Q&A box, and we're going to try our best to get those answered for you today. My name is Tina Jackson. I serve as Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education here at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and I'm bringing you greetings today, and just grateful, colleagues, to be able to share with you all about this excellent opportunity. Excited to share more. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So the True Grant is something that we're really excited about. We have been planning this for quite some time. Kudos to my colleague, Dr. Reynes, who will also be sharing this afternoon. And then also my colleague, Manny, who is here. I'm not sure if my other colleague has joined us or not, Doug Brock, who serves as part of our legal team. But I'm going to just take a moment and ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Manny, could you share your name and your title and just a little bit about yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Manny Garcia, and I am the program specialist for a couple of grants here at the coordinating board. If you have any questions later on down the road, I will be the person that you'd be contacting. So thank you.
Thanks. And Sherry?
Hi, I'm Sherry Rannis. I'm Director of it's a new title, so it's hard for me to remember. Director of Workforce Education and Innovation here at the agency, and very delighted to be able to talk to you today about the TRUE Grant Program, because it has been coming over a number of months, and we're all very excited it's now rolling out.
Yes, yes. And on that note, I'm going to talk a little bit about our strategic priorities. You know, it's been great to be out and about a little bit. We've had some engagements throughout the month of April, and even now in May, we're going to be hitting the road a lot to see all of you across the great state of Texas. And so many of you have seen the strategic plan that is centered around building a talent strong Texas. And so we're excited to continue to make sure that in all the work that we're doing throughout the Workforce Education Division, we are truly attaining post-secondary credentials for our students across the state, focusing in making sure that those students who may have dropped off for whatever reason, that we find them and that we're able to support them through your institutions. We're also really being strategic about making sure that we're matching the labor market demands regionally speaking. So as we do this work, we're asking all of you all, and we're paying close attention to credentials of value based off of the diverse regions throughout our state. And in all ways, as we do this work, we want to make sure to include research, because we know that it is so important as we move forward to know as much as we can about how to make things better, how to move the needle to scale, and then not just scale, but sustain the work that all of you all are engaged in throughout the state. As we move forward, we are staying connected to our goals around equity and the importance of not only tracking students, but making sure that students really are also getting their degrees, their credentials, and things that they need to move forward with their careers. We're working across all sectors, colleagues. We work very closely with our two-year institutions, also our four-year institutions, and our private sectors. And we're also working closely with TEA and TWC. So just glad to be engaged with you all today to talk about the TRUE program. Next slide. So some of you all are really familiar with this. I will share with you all that I actually started this journey as Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education in December of 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. Wow. Is all I can say about that. We all know where we were during that season of this pandemic. And so, you know, it does really bring me great joy to say that throughout the past 2 years, we have rolled out a lot of important programs to help to reskill and upskill students across the state of Texas. So as you can see here, this slide particularly outlines where we started in December of 2020 and where we went throughout the year and a half to almost 2 years of doing this work. And so we've had 3 rounds of reskilling to support students with scholarships. Then we also had institutional capacity grants for the TRUE program that was in the spirit of what we're going to talk about today. And so, you know, that was really important work. And as we've moved forward, we also added accelerating credentials of purpose and value. And that is such an important program, an important piece to the puzzle. And last but not least, we started off really with at the beginning of this year, rolling out in detail the work-based learning initiative, and exciting work that we're doing across the state to also make sure that students are able to get paid internships and apprenticeships. So this is good stuff, and I'm going to keep the ball rolling with the next slide. Could you go to the next slide, please? So just to talk a little bit about the TRUE Grant Program, this is a new effort for 2022, and should not be mistaken as a continuation of our TRUE Institutional Capacity Grant Initiative. Next slide. Just to talk a little bit more about what that looks like, the origins of TRUE. It is the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Through Education program that was established in the 87th legislature. During the regular session, Senate Bill 1102 was formed. And from that, we have Education Code, Texas Education Code 61.881 dash 61.886, the Texas legislature provided appropriations to implement the TRUE program during the third special session of the 87th legislation. And that was through Senate Bill 8. And the Senate Bill 8 provides funding from the U.S. Department of Treasury through the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund, which was established under the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA, of 2021. So TRUE was appropriated $15 million to make sure through Senate Bill 8 that the coordinating board is able to award funds for TRUE under Senate Bill 8 from the Office of the Governor. So we are rolling this out as we speak and excited to talk to you all about the details today. Next slide. I am going to turn this over to Dr. Reynes, who is going to go into more details about what the actual grants, goals are, and objectives. Dr. Reynes.
Thanks, Dr. Jackson. Appreciate it. We wanted to provide this slide, even though it's got tons of words in a very small space. It's pretty much directly from the statute that Dr. Jackson just mentioned. And this is actually the language from Texas Education Code 61.883, the purposes of TRUE. So the folks who founded and framed TRUE have particular ideas in mind about what it should do and why it should be, and which of course the legislature endorsed heartily. And the first is to provide training in existing, new, or redesigned accelerated programs that teach high demand skills and lead to post-secondary industry certifications or other workforce credentials that are of high value in high need occupations. So the idea is to build out our offerings to students in accelerated programs of high value and high occupations, to develop those programs to be industry aligned and in those high demand areas, and to make sure that they're completed quickly in 6 months or less, to redesign existing programs of certifications and credentials and other workforce programs to be high demand, industry aligned at short, 6 months or less, to expand our institutional capacity to provide those kinds of programs and to make sure that they're stackable into high demand career pathways and address the needs of high demand occupations, and to tie those in to what your local and regional workforce boards, employers, and other workforce stakeholders say is important to have in terms of capacity in your region. To provide student aid to students who decide to enroll in those kinds of programs, the kinds of programs that are being built or stood up, and to track what happens to those students, to track their enrollment, their credential completion, and their employment outcomes over time. So a big charge, a strong charge, a specific charge from our legislature. Next slide, please. Now we're going to sort of translate into a sort of simpler place. There we go. These are sort of the nuts and bolts of the TRUE Grant Program Awards. We have 3 categories of award ranges: up to $50,000 for planning grants, $50,000 to $500,000 if a single institution or a single grantee, a single applicant is applying for a project, and $50,000 to up to $1 million for consortia projects. We have about $15 million to give out for this purpose. And so this is a competitive grant award. Applications are going to be evaluated and ranked and awarded until that fund runs out. Eligible applicants for this award are Texas Public Lower Division Institutions of Higher Ed. That's the statutory language. It means public junior colleges, public state colleges, and public technical institutes. Consortia of 3 or more public lower division institutions are eligible to apply. And local chambers of commerce, trade associations, or economic development corporations that are partnering with lower division institutions of higher education, lower division institutions of higher education are also eligible to apply. And each eligible applicant can submit up to 2 applications, one as a single recipient and the other as a member of a consortium. Next slide, please. The tasks and activities associated with this program are pretty clear. Your goal is to plan, redesign or expand or create these credential programs or courses of study that can be completed in 6 months or less. You need to select a program in a high demand, which means high value, high need occupational area, and you choose them in consultation with workforce stakeholders. Those programs can be for certification, certificate programs, or other kinds of workforce credentials or courses of study. It's a relatively open idea about what that program is going to be about. But if they're sub-certificate one programs, that is programs that are not resulting in a certificate one or above, these programs should be designed to be convertible or stackable to credit-bearing programs. They should have that link to credit-bearing paths of study. And programs may be delivered in person, online, or hybrid mode. So the mode of delivery and the mode of instruction is not, is as well very flexible, very open. Next slide, please. When we look at project proposals, the review process is going to have a variety of different criteria in consideration. This is that list. First and foremost is the best overall value to the state of the project you're proposing. Second, and equally important, is the project quality, which will be determined by evaluation criteria, which we'll go into in a minute. And whether or not the project exhibits priority criteria, we'll outline those in a minute as well. There are two other considerations that we've been asked to make statutorily within the statute that we've been talking about that authorized the True Grant Program. One is consideration of location. We're requested to do our best to extent practicable to provide grants to at least one eligible entity in every region of Texas. And as you know, we have 10 higher education regions in Texas. Our previous True institutional capacity grant, which was GEAR funded, did do that. We have grants in every single one of the 10 regions in Texas. We're hoping that that will happen again, but it depends on our applications, depends on you and those who apply. Another consideration statutorily that we must make is that these projects involve programs that are not duplicative of existing programs unless that duplication is really important and necessary for a regional workforce area's needs. So say you decide you're going to do, I'm going to throw something out there, cybersecurity, and there's an existing cybersecurity program somewhere in your region. You need to make the case that the fact there'll be another cybersecurity program makes sense for your region. That's what that sort of a thought process is about. Next slide, please. What are the priority proposals? There are 4 considerations. Proposals for consortia, for new or existing consortia of 3 or more public institutions. So if you're planning on forming a consortia, you'll get bonus points for that in the evaluation and review of your application. Projects by single institutions or consortia that incorporate active partnerships with chambers of commerce and trade associations, economic development corporations, or local workforce boards also get additional bonus points. Projects that offer affordable options for students get some additional bonus points, and projects that prioritize displaced workers, in addition, get some additional bonus points. So these are the 4 priority criteria or priorities that you can build into your proposal for extra bonus points in the evaluation of your application. Next slide, please. By the way, we know we're giving you a lot of information, but not only is this workshop informational webinar being it's being copied and will be posted as is. This deck will be posted online as well. So no worries, this is available to you. And also this is all information reflected in our RFA, which is already posted online. Okay, True project budgets. What can you include in your True project budget? There are a lot of options here. You can work on curriculum development, instructional design. You can purchase instructional software. You can purchase instructional equipment. You can spend money on additional infrastructure to support instruction, whatever that might be. Student financial aid, as we mentioned, very important. Student support costs, faculty hiring and training capacity, off-the-shelf credential and training materials, project marketing and outreach. Up to $50,000 in your budget can include that pursuit, which is so incredibly important with new programs being stood up, and the data administration reporting regarding this project is also built in as a potential budget item for you all. Next slide, please. Wanted to go into a little detail about true student financial aid. Eligible students for student financial aid under this program are students who are enrolling or enrolled in that program during the grant period. So this grant period goes through 2023. And so for those of you who are enhancing or expanding or standing up new programs, if you have students enrolling and you want to build in a certain amount of financial aid, which is a major incentive, I think, for students, hopefully, that can be put into this project. The financial aid coverage can be for cost of attendance, tuition, and fees. We've already had some pre-webinar questions about this. Does financial aid extend to continuing education students? And the answer is yes, it does. And cost of attendance can include things like, well, cost of attendance is defined by your institution, but it can include things like uniforms or mandatory equipment purchases and things like that. The award cap is $2,500 per eligible student per semester or term. Since these are very short-term programs of 6 months or less, we feel like that's a pretty good coverage from a financial perspective. And we're also saying that you can calculate that money, the financial aid that would come from this source, with a middle dollar calculation. That is, what you do is you would look at the state institutional and private aid first, and then you could add in this true student financial aid, and then add in Pell Grants and other federal aid sources. So this true student financial aid, would be sandwiched in the middle of your true financial aid package calculation for students. Next slide, please. On our website, as of April 25th, last Monday, when we made the announcement about the availability of this program, we posted application materials, the request for application, the RFA, with federal certification forms, the application form itself and instructions on how to fill it out, a budget request form and instructions on how to fill that out. And after this event today, the slide deck from this webinar will be posted as well. And we hope also, as I said, a link to the video of this event, if all goes well. Sometimes the gremlins get in the system. Next slide, please. This is a schema of the true proposal evaluation criteria and the points afforded to different components of your application. Your selection of education and training programs, your description of how you chose them, your goals and activities, your qualities and capacity as an applicant and that of your consortium or partners, the alignment of funding, your budget alignment with your project goals, and your timeline are all the sort of mandatory core elements. And each of those is afforded up to 5 points each. The bonus points align with the priorities that we talked about earlier, whether or not you're proposing a consortium, whether or not you have an active workforce partnership, whether or not you address affordability, whether or not your project is focused on displaced workers. Those are the bonus points segments. On the total, grand total is up to 44 points. So this is what the reviewers of your applications will be looking at and thinking through as they look at what you've proposed. Next slide, please.
All right.
And here I'm turning back to Dr. Jackson.
Thanks so much, Dr. Reynes. So I get to talk to you guys about something that we're excited about as far as this program goes. This characteristic of the program is unique, and we're really encouraging all of you to include workforce stakeholders. You know, they are such an important ingredient to workforce development. And as you can see here from the slide, eligible applicants may be a grantee or receive grant funding in a partnership. The eligible workforce applicants are defined as chambers of commerce, economic development corporations, and trade associations. Required project development consultation also is with employers, Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Corporations, trade associations, and local workforce development boards. We also would like for you to consider having projects in partnership with stakeholders to bring about really what I would say is a united front. We find that when you work together collaboratively in regions, you're just able to get so much more done. You have more resources. We're able to scale and sustain the work. And I know I said that earlier, and that is an important ingredient. We are going to prioritize institutions who have partnerships with workforce stakeholders. And so we're excited about this characteristic of the program, this new, unique opportunity that all of you will have. Next slide, please. So just talking about the timeline, as Dr. Reynes mentioned, we did provide application materials and an announcement on April 25th. And then today we're having the informational webinar. Inquiries will take place over the next couple of weeks, and the deadline will be May 18th on that. And then the application is due on May 23rd. And moving forward, after we've taken time to review all the great applications, we're going to make sure to get an announcement out by July of 2022. And the grant period ends on August 31st, 2023. Next slide, please. A few tips, you know, we'll talk more in detail. I've been looking at some of the questions, so I'm sure we'll talk a little more about this as we move forward. But as you can see here, a few tips would be to really focus in on your labor market information within your region, colleagues. There was a question around if there was a preference as far as which programs an institution should select. And I would say focus on your market, focus on what you know to be true about the area, the region that you're in, and also connect up with your industry partners so that they can give you as much information that'll show the connection with the workforce stakeholders. So really making sure to have conversations collectively with your stakeholders and being unique in a way where you're showing the occupations that are growing within your region, and you are focusing in collectively to talk about those things. Then I'd also just share with you this last bullet here that talks about the focus point of the project. Having one program or a closely related set of programs in a growing occupation is ideal. And we're really hoping that as you move forward, you're able to focus in a way that really speaks clearly to the labor market demands and where we see the future of the work going. Next slide, please. And on that note, okay, there we go. I was going to say, and on that note, I also just wanted to share with you all that as you move forward, think creatively about connecting the budget to what we know to be true about the overall goals of your program. Seek out your legal guidance so that you can make sure that anything that you're proposing in your budget, you'll be able to actually do based off of our federal requirements. And I know that that can be challenging at times, which is why it's so important to seek your legal counsel. Make sure that your project timeline is realistic, I would say, and reflects the tasks and activities described in the proposal. And so we know that sometimes the supply chain is challenging. We get that, colleagues. So we want you to reflect that in your timeline and be realistic about that. As far as the consortiums and partnerships, if you can get documentation, meaning letters of support or partnership agreements as part of your application process to submit, I think that that will also be a great addition to your application. We want to make sure that the partnerships are formal and that you are really connecting up with your workforce partners as well. And then I think we're going to go on into questions. We had quite a few of them. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn the floor over back to Dr. Reynes, and then we'll kind of figure out what questions we haven't answered.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for the questions. There are already some very good questions. As I mentioned, we had some pre-webinar questions as well that are being repeated here too. As I mentioned, the non-credit continuing education programs are eligible for this program. And the second question about non-credit tuition, books, supplies, and things like certification exams can also be considered, well, let's put it this way, non-credit, whether it's credit or non-credit, tuition, books, and supplies all fall under the category of cost of attendance or tuition, depending on how your institution defines that. Certification exams are an example of a potential student support and another cost. I don't believe that's, wouldn't call that a tuition or cost of attendance expense, but you could put that in the student support category for your budget. So I hope that that answers that question. Well, the third question is there any industry-focused priority for this opportunity? And the answer, as Dr. Jackson has noted, is no. It depends on the industry priorities of your region and locale. That's what we're wanting you to pin down and think about, both through your analysis of labor market information, but your consultations with workforce stakeholders. It's so crucial, particularly employers. Can a college receive a second true grant if one was received in the last round in 2021? You bet. Can you apply for this grant program? You bet, no doubt. Is there a list of high demand jobs which can be taught in only 6 months or less? What a wonderful question. I don't think that there's any kind of extant list or exhaustive list in any case of what high demand jobs there are in Texas and whether or not different kinds of projects, different kinds of credentials can be brought to bear that are 6 months or less. That actually is why we're doing what we're doing. We're actually learning from you all through that first true institutional capacity grant, through the accelerated credentials grant, and through this opportunity about what you all think can be taught in 6 months or less that will be germane and important to the citizens of Texas in terms of their reskilling and upskilling and returning to the marketplace. That's why, importantly, we don't have any kind of call out for this particular opportunity. So Sophia, always nice to hear from you. Thank you for your question. The RFA says we can use funds to redesign programs. It also says we can target programs that can't duplicate. If we use the grant to redesign a current program, we offer, is that allowable only if we be expanding enrollment in that program? Well, as I think we explained in the deck, the idea is that if you have a rationale for duplication, you're good to go. So if you use the grant to redesign a current program, it's not only because you think expanding enrollment is going to be the point of it. I think the point also will be perhaps you need to shorten it. You need to make it 6 months or less. Perhaps you need to reconfigure it to fit what employers say you need to how you need to redesign that program. There may be a myriad of reasons to redesign a current program to offer, and we don't want to exclude any possibility. I hope that that answers your question. Doug, did you have anything you wanted to say about that? You look like you might want to respond.
No, I think that explains it well.
Next question, will this be an annual opportunity or will it be a one-time grant? Great, what a great question. So the True Grant Program is coming to you through our legislature, and our legislature funded it through SB 8 this year. It is, I think it is all of our hope that the True Grant Program becomes a fixture, it becomes a part of what we do and part of the biennium budget considerations. We can't predict what our legislature will do every 2 years, but the idea is that, as you heard from Dr. Jackson, credentials of value is an extraordinarily important part of our strategic approach to post-secondary education and training in Texas. So suffice to say, we want this not to be a one-shot, one-time deal, and I don't believe it was designed to be. But time will tell whether or not we can do this again, and we're hoping we can.
Sherry, can I add to that?
Please.
So the True legislation also requires the coordinating board to report to the legislature on the True program. So, and answer the question of, will this be a one-time opportunity? Part of that is on the quality of the applications and the outcomes that we have out of this grant opportunity. So, we want to work in partnership with the institutions to design the best possible programs for the best possible results so we can meet the workforce needs and thereby have positive reports back to the legislature in hopes to get additional funding for this program moving forward.
Absolutely. Your collaboration, the quality of your programs, and our ability to be able to show the legislature how cool this is, how tremendous this is for Texas really factors in this, as Doug said. Next question. When we say regional or local level can be considered workforce from the regional or local area that go to work in other areas after training? Well, you know what? Really good point. Community colleges, public institutions, junior colleges, technical institutes around the state of Texas serve their location. They also have a broader mission to help Texas in general and our nation, because workforce, good, strong workforce helps everyone at every level, including, and most importantly, from our perspective, in some ways, the individual, right? Whether that individual decides to stay or go is kind of immaterial in the process of this particular program. It's something that your institution likely should consider. If you're going to be serving the needs, goals, and targeted strategic efforts in your region or locale, ideally you want to hold on to folks, but reality is reality. Americans are mobile. So I hope that answers your question. It's a factor I think you all should take into consideration, but it's not something that we're evaluating you on directly. Can you get a copy of the slides? You bet. As I said, it's going to be posted hopefully by tomorrow. Nice long question. Is CDL, I think the bottom line is this, with all the lovely detail, by the way, and I commend the author of this question. Would CDL training be eligible? Yeah, yes, you bet. Sure is. We had CDL, we do have existing CDL grants under the True Institutional Capacity grants from last year. Would students also have to earn? Yes, go ahead.
Sure, really quickly, just to also remember that part of this grant does require you to provide the data to show it is high demand. So the evaluators are not going to be making any assumptions on what is or is not high demand. They're going to rely on the data that is provided by the applicant to make that determination. So, I mean, Gail, yeah, you're probably right. Like there seems to be a clear shortage of CDL drivers, but we're not going to run with assumptions on this. It's going to be based on the data that's provided.
Would students also have to earn certification 6 months or less, or just complete the course program? So that's a really good question. It's a kind of a tricky one. If a certification in particular fields, sometimes those certification exams are held at particular times of year. Maybe there may be some limited access to when those certification exams are done. I think that we're asking you to make a determination about what the student has in hand at the end of their course or program that you've created, or that you're redesigning, or that you're planning for. And in certain cases, it's relatively easy to plan and organize that around a certification exam schedule. Sometimes it's not, because as I said, in some industries, there are very specific calendars for these things. So it's really on you to design or to pick, so first of all, select wisely, and second of all, configure what your program is supposed to do for a student accordingly. Of course, if certification is the point of it, then certification should be configured into your project, if you possibly can do it. Can you confirm that funding can be used to cover the cost of tuitions? You bet it is. It's cost of attendance or tuition. We have a couple of other questions that are not posted here that I'm going to read right now. And it's a really provocative question. I love this question. Thank you to the person who sent it in. Is a shorter term training program more desirable than a longer 6-month training program? What a great question. And it's a great question because it's basically saying, should we really be gunning for the really short programs for students or not? And as you can see from the criteria we've shared with you, whether you're short or really short is not a criteria for evaluation per se, in the way we're going to look at your application. We're looking for really strong rationale for why you selected what you selected and why you're configuring this the way you're configuring it. So I don't think the word desirable, more desirable is really not part of the way we're thinking about this, but it is part of the way you all should be considering what you want to do and what you want to offer students, especially if you're talking with employers and workforce boards and you're saying, hey, we could get this done in 4 months. Is that better than getting it done in 6? If we got this better done in 2 months, would that be better than 4? It's the kind of conversations, the kind of thoughtful design that you need to put into play here. So thank you for asking that question. Can a college receive a true grant this round if the applicant received a true grant before? The answer to that is yes, as I think we mentioned before, absolutely, which is really good news. And I think, unless we have no additional open questions, we are, I think, complete for now. I would encourage anyone, as we are saying our closing remarks, if you have additional questions, don't hesitate. Also add, as Manny Garcia said earlier, he and I, Doug and Dr. Jackson and our team stand ready to answer any questions you might have about this opportunity. We are deeply, we're just deeply in anticipation of what you all have to present to us. The kinds of projects we've seen so far have been exciting. And since this one so consciously and intentionally invites much deeper workforce stakeholder involvement, both as a potential grantee, as a consultant, and as a partner, we're just so excited to learn what you all will come up with. We're very excited to see what you're going to do and what you would like to do. And with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Jackson if you had any final thoughts or words.
I just want to thank everyone. And, are there any additional questions? I know that we've got a few minutes left. So
we just got one more.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, we did. We need to give people a moment to pause and think, right? By the way, we, as always, we also appreciate your patience and recognize that we're giving you a ton of information in a very concentrated period of time. So happily, we think that the slide deck and the recording of this webinar hopefully will be helpful to you going forward. The question is, if granted, when would the program need to start by? Really great question. So if you're going to do financial aid, if you're going to expand or enhance an existing program or build a new one, and you're going to do financial aid, you need to start it up before the end of the grant period, which is August 2023. It's about a year. You'll have about 12 months to get this project done. If you're planning the grant, or if you are building something and you're not quite ready, you don't have to have a program stood up in that time period. But I think you'd have a stronger application if you said you would. And as I said, if you stand up a program or we're working on an existing program, you can give financial aid to students during the grant period. So it's good. It would be a good thing to have the program actually running during the grant period. But again, it depends on what you're planning to do or what the project is. May we apply for multiple programs, courses, or only the most relevant to workforce demands? For example, HVAC and electrical programs under the bigger construction umbrella. Okay, so this speaks to the focus and tightness that Dr. Jackson spoke of before. Sure, you could say we want to do everything and anything you have to do with construction. But is that going to be really a tight and smart proposal for a year's worth of work when you could actually create or redesign or expand and go really deep and do really good work on a couple of things that are highly related, say underneath electrical or underneath HVAC? So we would encourage you to think about focus and the relatedness of the program projects that you're planning. We discourage you to do a large portfolio of a variety of different things. That's not what this project is about.
Mm-hmm. And I would just share, I'm sorry, Dr. Reynes, I would just share, colleagues, as you work with your workforce board, advisory board members, your stakeholders in general in the different industries across the state, really get specific about what those labor market needs are with data and what programs can be solutions for those particular needs. And I think that that'll help you to make sure that you're not too broad. We just can't say enough positive things about building partnerships with your stakeholders, and also connecting up with other institutions to build consortiums and partnerships with this work, because we're finding, of course, it takes a lot of resources to get this done. And because of some of the challenges that we're seeing in the field with the supply chain issues, the more you can really have conversations with industry partners who may actually have a different avenue to get resources for you, the better, or at least to give you different approaches on how to frame your program so that it's as specific as possible. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Reynes.
Sure. We have a couple of questions here that they're going to require Doug Brock input, I think. Is an employee of the institution who's also enrolling as a student eligible to participate and or receive financial aid and student supports? So unless Doug tells me otherwise, I believe this is up to you all. A student's a student, whether they're an employee or not, as long as they're employed by the program. What do you think, Doug? I don't know if there's any nuance there I've missed.
No, based on that information, I think that's accurate.
Cool. Can funds be used to build out a facility for hands-on training? Build out meaning add additional classroom space in the shell building. The issue in rural areas is lack of infrastructure such as facility space. Believe me, we get this. We totally get this. But this is one of those areas where you all need to do some due diligence on your side and consult with your legal team and your Office of Sponsored Programs, because the federal regulations around this kind of activity, while not ruling them out, there's quite extensive requirements that you need to pay attention to. Doug, is there anything additional you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. You need to work with your legal counsel on those issues. So the way the legislature allocated funds from the state and local fiscal recovery fund, which is a federal grant award from the U.S. Department of Treasury. They have specific requirements on allowable and unallowable costs in the final rules. While those kind of capital expenditures are not prohibited, they do come with certain requirements in terms of what you have to do, what you have to do to be in compliance with federal construction regulations and labor market funding. And then also in terms of federal law regarding Clean Air and Water Act and similar provisions. So you need to walk through those and be aware of them before you decide that's where you want to spend the funds.
Right, and I think we totally understand why. I think that's a really important question and a really important arena. Again, not explicitly prohibited, but potentially complicated and important to find out if within this time period of this project, you'll be able to do what you want to do and still stay in compliance with federal rules and regulations, which is, of course, very important, both for you and for us.
And there may be, also think about the best use of the funds. Like, for example, I'm fairly certain that under the grant requirements, you have to meet Davis-Bacon on any construction project. So that can be very cost prohibitive in terms of, the labor costs you will incur to build it. So just think about that, as well as Tina has highlighted a couple of times, supply chain issues. And if you say you're going to do this, are the things you need to build it available? Are you going to be able to get them in time and get them up and running? So, think about that. And then it's one of those things that's also an opportunity for partnerships with your other entity. So can you use their space? There's no requirement that this certification take place on your property. Partner, partner with them to see if you can get use of some of their space and materials so you can run the program.
So the final question is a follow-on to that concerning new construction or new facilities. So whether it's new facilities or the conversion of old facilities, the same considerations apply that Doug has been talking about, where you really do need to think carefully about best use of funds, what the federal requirements are, and the cost implications for them, because they're pretty stiff. Whether you're doing new construction or conversion or purchase of property, or any of those kinds of questions. Cool. And by the way, Doug is our counsel, not yours, but he is providing you insight into what the standing state of regulations are. And that's why we are urging you to talk to your own counsel and office of sponsor or office of sponsor projects about this. Do we have any other for border colleges like Texarkana? Is there a residency requirement? Texas resident versus Arkansas. Yes. Well, I think, again, thank you, Doug, for being here. This would, I guess, pertain to financial aid. We don't have any particular kinds of determinations or requirements around enrollment, or who's enrolling in your classes and where they're from or anything else like that. But regarding financial aid, I don't think we put any stipulations about this in this particular RFA, Doug. So I want to turn to you to see if we may have to investigate this a little further to answer your question properly.
Yeah, let me, so this would really only apply to the student aid portion. Of course, anybody can participate in the program. There is no requirement in the RFA that they be a Texas resident.
That's right. At least it's not explicitly in the RFA.
No.
So that would be the answer. But again, if this is your institution's decision about who is eligible, it's for students who are going to be enrolling or enrolled in the project's programs, the programs that are the subject of your project during the grant period. Remember? So a little bit, there's some constraints around financial aid that are about timing and what these students are doing with you. So whatever policy or approach you take to this, we would urge you to document it for the purposes of clarity for your own institution, but also for audit purposes. Any other questions? We've had such good questions. We're about 5 minutes early, but that's not terrible. Mm-hmm. Doug, thank you so much. Manny, thank you so much for helping and providing wise wisdom now and in the future around this program to everyone and to us and to me especially. Dr. Jackson, any closing words? I think we're
just to thank you also, Dr. Reynes, for your leadership and your just dedication to this work. We've done a lot together over the past 2 years, and I always publicly thank you, but I can never thank you enough. So thank you for all that you're doing. And Manny, thank you also for the hard work. I know we're all working around the clock, and Doug, and we bother you so much that we almost need to buy you lunch. I'm so fortunate, colleagues, to be able to work with a great team. If there are any other questions that come up, please do feel free to reach out to all of us. And let us know how we can answer those questions. We will have a window of time that you can have, ask information and specific details. Manny, any other thoughts about the application that's online or any other logistics that colleagues would need to be aware of?
Oh, just that as soon as this is complete and done, I'm going to go ahead and load this slide deck over to the website. So if anybody has additional questions or they want to follow up, or if there is something unclear, then you can always go back to that slide deck. But overall, I'll be available. So you know where to reach me.
All right.
At least most of you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, colleagues. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward to receiving your application.
Oh, did you want to put the last slide up, Manny? you don't mind, sorry. That's just our contact numbers. Our
Oh,
contact-
yes, yes, and our
Yeah.
contact information.
There we are.
Here we are.
Thanks so much.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
I'll just keep this slide open a little bit longer.
Thanks, Manny. I'll disappear and I'll call you.
Right.
Bye.
Will do. Right.